All right, hi everybody. This is what I look like without a mask on. So it's good to see some faces. I'm used to people, their eyes and up. So it's cool to see actual faces today. But I appreciate you having me on, Jessica, and we'll go ahead and get rolling. So I'm going to share my screen, and as we start going through this, really just want to kind of preface this with what the purpose is. So let me get squared away here. I've got Jessica up in the corner. I'm trying to put me there, but maybe she can help me do that. Okay. All right. So first of all, I'm going to start out with thank you. So a lot of times thank yous go at the end, but I wanted to start out with those. So first of all, Jessica, for putting all this together, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes with this, and putting this all together is a big deal. So we really appreciate that. Lauren McDaniel. Lauren, a lot of you will end up having her in class if you're a student, or you've had her already, so you know how great of an instructor she is. But she's also directing the exercises medicine on campus for the whole university, and multiple years now. And so I wanted to say thank you to Lauren for all of her work on that. The national recognition continues to grow for K-State in that area. So it's really cool there. The college itself, as Jess said, the college itself spends a lot of time trying to engage students to make sure that we're adding value to you guys, and that you guys feel that you can come and approach any of us at any time about things that might be going on with school, with life, so we can make sure that we're doing everything possible from our end at K-State to make sure that you are doing well. So really appreciate the College of Health and Human Sciences for that. Of course, my department, I have to send a shout out for my department, kinesiology. We're going to talk about that at the last slide as well, some different majors that are available through Kines. But Kines gives me a platform to share information. And honestly, it's a great team to be a part of. Some Kines co-faculty are on here right now. So really appreciate you guys and all that you do. K-State students, there's a bunch of you on here right now. I appreciate all the work you guys put in, continuing to work through this interesting semester, to say the least. And it looks like spring will be similar, but we're kind of settling into it and getting into a groove. And I think people are getting more comfortable, which is great, because that's what we want. We want you guys here in Manhattan. We want you guys on campus. So we're excited for all that you guys are doing. And then again, I want to send a shout out to, I know a lot of these people who own these companies here in town. So I really am into the sport, health, fitness, performance side of things. And because of that, and because I've been in town for a long time, I've had an opportunity to create some really good relationships. So Kansas Strength, Aaron Rickenberg and Kenny Phillips own that. They do a great job. For those of you who want to check them out, they actually will give a free 7-day trial to anyone when you walk in the door. There's going to be a prize from them given away, but anybody on this can literally walk into Kanza and get a free 7-day trial there. 9 Round, Tim and Melissa Vettel, we've known them for a while. Melissa actually used to coach my daughters in gymnastics, and they're a great couple. They do a great job with 9 Round. They have a great community there. Little Apple Pilates, Hillary Santana is a K-State kinesiology grad, and she does an awesome job with Pilates. And if you think Pilates is just kind of core work, you definitely need to go see Hillary, because she'll show you a whole new world with Pilates. Chapter 5 Yoga, Jessa Voos, again, really great background in yoga. I've learned a ton from her just spending some time. And then K-State CrossFit, of course, Travis Haug really keeps that going and organizes it. And if you walk in there over in the natatorium, you'll see how well that's put together for allowing people to continue to train, but to train in a safe environment. So really appreciate Travis and all the work he does there. But there's my thank yous. I'll probably say more throughout this, but I wanted to start there. And then to kind of give you the reason for this. So FAD Fitness, generally, if you've taken any classes in kinesiology, you understand, and even if you haven't, hopefully you understand that physical activity leads to better health outcomes. So in my opinion, unless you're doing something that's going to hurt you, something that's dangerous physically, there's really not a bad way to move more. Because as you move more, you're going to see health benefits from that. And generally in our society, we don't have a problem with people doing too much physical activity. We have a problem with people doing too little. And so the purpose of this isn't really to say, it's not at all to say, hey, this fad in the fitness world is bad or this fad is good, but it's really to give you a foundation for what are the underlying adaptations to that type of fitness or that type of exercise or whatever these fads are doing. And because when you're armed with that information, you can choose, hey, I want this adaptation, I want that adaptation, and you can pick from the wide variety of options that are out there in the health and fitness world. So that's my goal for this. And in fact, once we get done with this, if you want a copy of this PowerPoint, I really built it so people could have it and read from it and keep it. So if you want a copy after we're done, just email me. I have my email address at the end of this. But to start with, provide you with information you can begin applying immediately. So as we look at this first slide, really I view physical activity as this constant continuum, kind of in a circle. And so if you're healthy, if you are uninjured, you're basically in the prevention side, which means you're exercising for health, or you're exercising for performance, or you're exercising for both. But once an issue happens, you get sick or you have an acute injury, like, a torn ACL. I know people on here probably had torn ACLs, or an ankle injury, or things that are super common. Then you get to the treatment side. Well, the treatment side is going to come with a lot of healthcare, right? Immediate healthcare is athletic trainers. And then if you end up having to have surgery or going actually to see a physician or a PA or a nurse. And then you get out of that situation, you start rehab with a physical therapist or an occupational therapist. So kind of just so you understand how I view this, I view a prevention side, which is health, fitness, performance, and then a treatment side. But then once people come out of treatment, then you're going back to the prevention side. So it's this constant cycle, and which is great. And we need to be able to communicate with each other across all of these areas. So basically people can be as healthy and fit as possible and injured or sick for as little time as possible. And I know a lot of people on this Zoom right now who have had COVID and are recovered, which is great. So we want to make sure, you're good to go to resume physical activity. Some people recover quick, some people have more lingering effects. But again, getting through that and being back to a prevention side. So this talk is going to focus on the prevention side. So physical activity, health, and performance, understanding the foundations behind the fads. So again, this is going to look familiar for my 220 students on here, but just to define these things, physical activity is any bodily movement that produces a significant energy expenditure above resting levels. That can be accomplished as part of performing a daily task, like walking to class, biking to the store, housekeeping, carrying an infant, whatever you do that's increasing your physical activity above resting level, that's physical activity. Now, if you plan it, that's called exercise. That's just for our definitions, so we can look at those different things. But there are physical activity guidelines out there. And I wanted to post this just so you guys understood. When we look at these are health-based physical activity guidelines. So you see aerobic and muscle strengthening, children's, adults, and older adults. And then as we read through that, for children, 60 minutes of MVPA. So some of you are looking at like, what is MVPA? That stands for moderate to vigorous physical activity. And that is measured in METs. We're going to talk about that briefly, just so you guys understand the definitions there. But that's the aerobic side. And then the muscle strengthening as part of 60 minutes at least 3 days per week. So that's for just a general healthy child to stay healthy and continue to develop like we want them to, growing up through adolescence and then into adulthood. Then adults, we want 150 minutes of MVPA per week. So you see the 60 minutes per day as opposed to 150 minutes per week. So that physical activity drops a lot when we talk about health outcomes with adults, which is great. Or we can have 75 minutes of vigorous, which is just more intense physical activity. And then exercises targeting all muscle groups at least 2 times per week. Generally, as adults get older, they tend to lose muscle mass. So we want them to keep doing resistance, weight training type activities so they can so they can keep their muscle mass. And then older adults is going to look the same, but then you see that asterisk where it says, or what disease conditions allow. So it's going to be the same as adults, but moving forward there. This is for general health purposes. This is not going to improve a 1 mile time or a 5K time or help somebody set new PRs in their, deadlift. But these activities will do a great job in helping people to avoid chronic disease, or at least to delay the onset of chronic disease, which is a big deal. Obviously, chronic disease is a huge part of our society right now. So any way we can help those numbers, that's great. So you guys understand what METs mean. So physical activity has energy cost. Those are expressed as METs. A MET is reporting the rate of oxygen use at rest. So right now, while you're watching this, the amount of oxygen that you're taking in and your body's utilizing per minute is 1 MET. And then MET levels are related to the intensity of an activity. So if you keep reading down, it says moderate activity 3 to 6 METs. So that MVPA that you saw on the previous slide just means that you're at about 3 times your resting rate to 6 times your resting rate. And you can really, that's usually about 60 to 79% of max heart rate. So generally, most of us will look at intensity with our heart rate, because as you exercise harder, your heart rate goes up. And so anywhere from 60 to about 79% is that moderate level of physical activity as far as aerobic activity. Vigorous is going to be greater than 6 METs, or 80% or more of your max heart rate. So then the question becomes, well, how do I know what my max heart rate is? That is over on the right-hand side. So the way you figure that out is you just take 220 minus your age. So if you're 20 years old, your estimated max heart rate is going to be about 200 beats per minute. And most of us have wearables now that will tell us our heart rate. So most of us that are watching the Zoom right now can look down at our watch and actually push a button that's going to say what your heart rate is right now. And so that's an excellent way for you to keep track of your physical activity. And a lot of us have exercise measurements, and those have to do with METs, and it'll tell you, how much physical activity or how many steps they want you to take in a day and all those kind of things. There's a lot of cool technology out there right now that will do that. But I want you to understand the baseline here for physical activity and health, and then health benefits of physical activity. So we're not just saying, hey, you should go do this because it's good for you, right? As you look at these health benefits for adults on the left, you decrease the chance of early death. You decrease the chance of coronary heart disease, decrease the chance of stroke, decrease the chance of high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, different types of cancer, colon and breast cancer are positively affected by exercise, physical activity, obesity, osteoporosis, falls, depression, and cool one at the bottom, increased cognitive function, which means you actually can think clearer a lot of times when you're more physically active, which is very, very cool. And then if you look on the right for youth, you get increased cardiorespiratory and muscular fitness, increased bone health, increased body composition, meaning lower fat mass, higher lean tissue mass, increased cognitive function and academic performance. Actually, if you guys are very interested in that, a lot of people are just interested in cognitive performance and physical activity as it relates to youth. There's a book called Spark that has some great information on that. You have a decrease in type 2 diabetes, decrease in high blood pressure, decrease in obesity, decrease in cardiovascular metabolic health biomarkers. And honestly, those lists could go on. So hopefully we're painting a picture here that physical activity is good for you. None of that really means much unless you can find something that you enjoy doing, though. And we understand that as humans, we want to figure out what's fun physically and then do it. And then all these benefits come along with it. And so as we look at this, study of how diseases develop. This is exercise epidemiology. And the reason I'm showing the next 2 slides is so you guys start understanding the difference between a health benefit and a performance or fitness benefit. So as we look at this, we have coronary heart disease. This is one of the leading causes of death in our country. And we have level of physical activity or fitness. And so what you can see here is the low risk, medium risk, high risk, sedentary risk is very high. Sedentary is just inactive. Go to work, come home, sit down, not much physical activity at all. As we get into low physical activity, it drops significantly. So it doesn't take a lot of physical activity to markedly reduce your risk of chronic disease, specifically in this case, coronary heart disease, which is a great benefit of physical activity. Getting out and walking more, or riding your bike, or anything like that. And then as we move to medium, we see a huge decrease in the chance of coronary heart disease. So this is a health metric. So you don't have to move a lot to get healthier, or reduce your chances of chronic disease. So as we start looking at this more, let's start looking at, okay, health versus performance a little bit. So the specificity of exercise principle. So health and or fitness benefits are dependent on a specific exercise. So there's multiple factors that influence that. So as we look at those, this is a nice thing to remember. It's called the FIT principle. So when we look at exercise, health and or fitness benefits are dependent on specific exercise and then intensity of that exercise. So you can manipulate those things by using this FIT principle. Frequency, the number of times per week that you're training, exercising, being physically active. Intensity, how hard are you exercising? So you can either measure that with METs, but it's a lot easier just to measure it with your heart rate. As your heart rate goes up as a percentage of your max heart rate, you can measure intensity very easily for aerobic type work. If you're talking about strength training, then that's going to be a percentage of your 1 rep max or your total strength. So that's how we measure intensity a little bit differently with strength training. Time is how long you're exercising. For aerobic work, for strength work, that's going to be sets and repetitions of exercises. And then type, what are you doing? Are you doing aerobic, resistance, combination? There's a lot of different things you can do out there. But remembering this FIT principle will help you kind of compartmentalize, oh, here's different ways I can change my workout so I can get different benefits. And again, here's the health versus fit model. This has the fitness model on it. So let's take a close look at this, and then we'll get into training and what kind of adaptations you might be looking for. So I'll check my watch real quick. We're doing good on time. So your benefits of training, this is the intensity of training. This is the frequency or number of times per week that you're training, and this is the duration. So this is a more of an aerobic situation or endurance type fitness. So all we have to do is 40 to 50%, and we get these huge health benefits. Right? 1 to 2 times a week, duration 10 to 20 minutes, so not long at all. And we get this huge health benefit. Now, if we want to train for fitness and performance, we want to get better at a 5K. We take up triathlons, and we want to get better at cycling and swimming. Those kind of situations happen. Well, now we're going to have to move that intensity up. We're going to have to move the frequency up, and we're going to have to move the duration, and we're going to have to keep moving those out if we want to hit really elite levels of fitness. And for you, everybody's elite level is a little bit different. It's relative, right? But if you're trying to maximize your potential, you're going to have to spend a lot more time, and you're going to have to work at a lot higher intensity to get those results. And these are really the questions that I get the most about training. When I'm getting questions from students or people in the gym or just people who know what I do, most of the time they're asking about training related questions. How do I get stronger? How do I do this? And that's what we're really going to talk about next. So training for fitness and performance. This is a cool picture of K-State's strength and conditioning facility in the football complex. So if you haven't been able to get in there, I would take a tour. It's very, very nice. Actually, over on this side that's not pictured, they have an indoor basically hill that's 2 stories high. So they make people do hill runs, sled pulls, things like that up that hill. So maybe they'd let you do that if you went in. You could probably have fun with that. But we'll keep moving on. So here are our general principles of exercise adaptation. So as we look at this, the SAID principle is one that you're going to see all the time when it comes to strength and conditioning literature. So it's specific adaptation to imposed demands, specific adaptation to imposed demands. So if you are working at high levels of your 1 rep max of your squat, and one rep max just means that's the most weight you could do for a squat one time. If you're working at high levels of that with squatting, your specific adaptation is going to be a strength adaptation. So you have to be specific in what you want to do. You're not going to get a lot better at running a 5K by doing heavy strength work all the time, right? There's some benefit to it, but it's not going to be specific to that event. Then you have to have overload as well. So with that, you have performance capacity needs to be above your usual level. So when you start training, or even if you've been training for a while, you're at a certain point with your training, and you're going to be adapted to a certain point with strength, with your cardiorespiratory endurance, with your what I call metabolic conditioning, which is more second energy pathway, highly glycolytic, anaerobic glycolysis, high intensity work, and you're going to be adapted to a certain point in all of those. In order to get beyond where you're at, you have to overload your system. That means you have to have a work rate or intensity higher than what you're used to. And that's how your body adapts. So we have this thing called the general adaptation syndrome, which is stress response. So we can talk about more about that, but really we want to overload your system, specifically how you want it to get better. And by doing that over time, you're going to see improvement. You don't want to have a huge overload at once because that leads to injury, right? So you want your training program to be both reliable in that it will work, but you want it to be safe as well. The issue that a lot of people run into is they try to do too much too fast, see improvement too quickly, and by doing that, they overload their system too much and they run into injuries, right? Orthopedic injuries or overuse injuries, things like that. So we have 3 factors to overload, and this is going to look similar to the FIT principle. And those are frequency, intensity, and duration. Again, number of training sessions for frequency, and that's usually measured in times per week. The intensity, how hard you're working, and then the duration, how long. The principle of individual differences. So this is a good one too, and you need to really take this into consideration, because a lot of times we see a training program, and let's say you see an ad in a magazine. This training program led to these results for this person. Well, that's great for that person, but that doesn't mean that if you impose that exact same training regimen that you're going to get the exact same results. You actually may gain more muscle mass, or you may gain less. You may cut a certain amount of time off your 5K if that's what you're going for. You may not. There's individual differences with each person. So everybody's going to respond differently to physical activity. So in order to understand how your body responds, I would recommend tracking everything. So if you really want to understand what's going on with your system, you need to track what you're doing aerobically, what you're doing flexibility, mobility wise, aerobically. And as you track things over time, you're going to see the best way that your body responds, how quickly you recover, because everybody's recovery rates are a little bit different. So just keep in mind that principle of individual differences, because when you're really training for fitness and performance, you need to know what's happening. I would recommend the same thing with your rest, how much rest you're getting. I would recommend the same thing with your food, the food that you're eating. And that's one for FNDH. Whoever talks for FNDH can fill in on the nutrition part of this. But obviously, you're not gonna recover. You're not gonna adapt as well as you could if your fuel sources aren't solid. So that's a whole nother talk, but that's a big part of this. Okay, let's talk energy pathways real quick. So we need to create energy. And the reason I'm talking about these is because these will relate to how you train. Because if you are kind of specific in your energy pathway training, you're going to get the adaptations you're after. So there's 3 major energy pathways. There's anaerobic, which means without oxygen. And just to preface that, there's always oxygen available at your muscle. So it's not that there's no oxygen there, but it's that you're working at an intensity or workload that's so high that your body doesn't have time to use oxygen to generate as much ATP as it needs. So then it goes to the first or second energy pathway. And then it generates ATP, that fuel source, without oxygen. So the chemical reactions there don't need oxygen, and you can create ATP quickly. And as we look at that, we have the first energy pathway, which is the immediate or CP system. A lot of you have supplemented with a substance called creatine or creatine phosphate. That's what CP stands for. 0 to 10 seconds, maximal intensity. So as hard as you can possibly go. And then the second one is energy from glycogen. Glycogen is a carbohydrate, sugar, and that's the glycolytic or lactic acid system. And that's going to contribute more ATP once you're at a relative max intensity, but not at your highest output. And so that's 10 seconds to about 3 minutes. That's usually the energy system that people don't want to train in very long. That's the quote unquote conditioning, where you're doing maybe 200-meter repeats with 10-second rest intervals or 20-second rest intervals and really, really pushing it. And you don't feel great. You feel that burning sensation in your muscles. There's all kinds of reasons that that's going on, but that's second energy pathway training. First energy pathway is going to be 3 to 5 reps. If you're doing heavy weightlifting, it's going to be 40-yard sprint with a long recovery time. So those are those pathways. And then you have your aerobic. Most of your ATP right now, as you're watching this, is coming from aerobic pathways because you have enough time, right? So most of your ATP being generated. So the lower the intensity, the more we bias the aerobic energy pathways. So those are those pathways, but I put those there so you can kind of picture those as we talk about training. So here's adaptations. So we have aerobic capacity. And really, without aerobic capacity, your basis for your general health is poor. So you need to have a developed aerobic capacity. Then you have metabolic conditioning, or more second energy pathway work. Hypertrophy is going to fall in with that a little bit. That's muscle growth, strength, power, and then speed. And then when I put underneath there, balance, coordination, agility, flexibility, those are all correlates of performance, but we're not going to specifically train those necessarily, or talk about the training for those, because you can, but that's a lot of neurological training. So we're going to talk about the other ones as we go through this, because a lot of the fitness regimens that you see out there right now fall within those categories. Okay, so the aerobic capacity, third energy pathway training, very easily measured with your heart rate. with your wearable, if you keep an eye on this as you walk across campus, you probably see an increase in your heart rate as you're walking. And the heavier your backpack is, the higher your heart rate goes, right? Lower heart rate is very good for overall health and recovery. Think long walks in your favorite scenery, right? So just general baseline aerobic energy pathway work. Now you can up the intensity and make it harder for sure, but the reason I'm saying that is most people don't consider that just a long hour and a half walk, how beneficial that is, even for a baseline for building fitness and performance. So just keep that in mind. Walk, jog, swim, elliptical, group fitness, whatever you like to do, find something that you enjoy. Lots of good progressive training programs out there. Polar does a great job. MyFitnessPal has some on there. There's not a lack of good progressive training programs out there for aerobic capacity. The pros, general health, longevity, awesome for that. Cons, does not provide muscular strength, endurance, and power. So if you're looking for muscular strength, explosiveness, ballistic stuff, that's not going to happen in this training, right? But you need it. Don't leave it out. Metabolic conditioning, second energy pathway training, commonly referred to as conditioning, right? If somebody says we're going to do a conditioning workout, people kind of start frowning like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's going to be hard work. So low, moderate load, high repetition, low rest interval style training. So popular forms, 9 round, you're going to see some good HIIT training there. HIIT stands for high intensity interval training. Boot camp, spin classes, some types of CrossFit, P90X is super popular. Obviously, all those are going to help with conditioning without a doubt. They're going to spill over into aerobics, spill over into strength, but mainly they're going to be that second energy pathway work. Pros, aerobic health benefits, improved overall work capacity, crossover hypertrophy and strength benefits for newer trainees. So if somebody's new and they start doing that, they're going to see a lot of benefit from it, even in strength and power. If you play a sport such as soccer, basketball, volleyball, recreationally, that is going to be a very good place for you to be, right? The cons, the emphasis on high volume often leads to poor form. So a lot of those, as I watch these, it's like, do another rep, do another rep, do another rep. And that's fine. But if technique starts to break down, all of a sudden we run into shoulder issues, elbow issues, knee issues, hip issues. And so really the big issue that I see with HIIT type training isn't that it's not beneficial, but that it's taken too far. And when it's taken too far, we really end up treating our soft tissues in a rough way, meaning that we get extra sore and even injured. And then also there's little development in absolute strength, power, and speed. So you're not going to build top end strength and power from this type of training. But obviously it's very good. Just make sure you're doing it correctly. All these things, like I said at the beginning, this isn't to say this is good, this is bad. It's to say, okay, if you're going to implement these things, make sure you're doing it in a smart way. And because you can't train when you're hurt, right? And I've made that mistake so many times as kind of moving through my career in fitness and health, is just overdoing it. And then you're hurt and you can't perform, right? So it's better to just stay in a good spot, keep your technique good, get these benefits, but still be able to perform on a daily basis. So that's metabolic conditioning. I put these all together because they're all basically different types of adaptation to similar training. So training these 4 qualities: hypertrophy, which is muscle growth, strength, power, and then muscular endurance. So training these 4 qualities can be made more clear by looking at a continuum of repetitions, loads, and rest periods. Keep in mind there are always some crossover training effects, but we can bias our training effects towards certain qualities. And here's how we do it. This rep maximum. This is from the NSCA. This is a great thing to look at when you're trying to understand how you want to train for certain outcomes. So repetitions here and here. Training goal: strength, power, hypertrophy, muscular endurance. Power is strength, speed, right? So can you move a good load fast? This is really where athleticism comes into play. So as we move up in repetitions, our bias goes from strength and power to hypertrophy or muscle growth. This is where you're going to see more muscle growth in this rep range. Then as we continue to go up in repetitions, we see hypertrophy, strength, and power continue to decrease, and we see muscular endurance. So this is a great, if you're going to kind of take any slide from this presentation, this one will probably help you the most based on the questions I usually get. So if you don't understand this, definitely reach out to me and we can talk you through it, and it can be something that can help guide your training long-term. I get these questions a lot, so here it is for you. This is from the NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association. If you're training for strength, over 85% of your 1RM, power, high, hypertrophy, lower percentage, and then muscular endurance even lower. And then here's your goal repetitions. I'm not going to belabor these because you guys can come back and look at these, but they're there for you. There's where you want to stick based on your training goal. With your training goal, your goal repetitions and number of sets. So if your goal is strength, power, hypertrophy, muscular endurance, here's your goal repetitions, here's your sets. Rest periods, right? How long do you rest in between each set? Similar or same training goals, here's your differences in rest periods. We can talk through those at some point, but I just want to put those out there for you so you understand how to bias your training. All this, the NSC, anything they put out is going to be evidence-based. So I want to just throw in this because a lot of people watching this right now are thinking about starting a training program, or you might be starting one soon, or you know people who are. And really what I want you to take from this is over on the left. It says more than 1 year of training experience, 80% training intensity is close to optimal. And that means we see the effect size grow the most at that level. Most people haven't done that consistently though. Most people aren't at a year of consistent strength training. If you're not, untrained athletes are closer to 60%. So don't take 80% and say, okay, I have to go find my 1 rep max. I actually wouldn't recommend that if you haven't done that for a while. I would find a 3 rep max because that's more safe for you. But just keep your training loads lower and allow yourself to build up. Once you get to that good training age of about a year, then you can go into those higher workloads. There's not a rush, right? You're gonna adapt over time. So it's just a really cool slide to look at. But athletes do not use the same intensity for every set in a specific exercise. Athletes do not use the same intensity for every exercise in a training session. So basically we can vary those, but this is really that 80% for trained athletes, 60% for untrained. And if you have any question, just consider yourself a little more untrained and go on the lower percentage range. There's a lot of quality organizations out there, but these have proven themselves to be outstanding in the world of health fitness. So the ACSM is the American College of Sports Medicine. The kinesiology department and people in FNDH are tied in closely with the ACSM. They're the premier organization out there when it comes to health, wellness, fitness on the physical side. So ACSM certified personal trainer, exercise physiologist, clinical exercise physiologist. You can't go wrong with an ACSM certification or information. The NSCA, they're tied in closely with the ACSM, but they are strength and conditioning. So if your goal is to work at a college or university in strength and conditioning, the NSCA, specifically the CSCS certification is what you'll want to get. NASM, this organization does a really, really great job with correctives and strength and conditioning. And I think every athletic trainer in the NBA actually is NASM certified as well. So they do a great job there. And then ACE for general population, general fitness clubs, if you're looking at working at a general fitness club or something like that, ACE does a great job. If you want to get the ACE certification, you can actually get a discount by going through the REC because the REC has a really good relationship with ACE. If you're looking for the ACSM, the Department of Kinesiology, you can talk to me about that because I can get you pointed in the right direction there. So those are quality organizations where you want to make sure you're getting your info from good places. Who do I follow on Instagram? So Instagram is a great place if you know who to look for, right? And so I wanted to put this out there because there's a lot of great information you can gain, not just from that social media, but from the websites and podcasts that those people do. So Peter Attia, current research on health with a focus on longevity. He's an MD. And so his level of information is super high when it comes to longevity. He pulls in a lot of physiology, really good there. Brett Bartholomew is a Kines grad, Coach Brett B, strength and conditioning for performance, incredible guy there. Luca Hosevar actually owns a gym in Seattle, but great on the business side and really, really good with general population strength and conditioning. And then Art of Coaching, that's Brett Bartholomew's company, professional communication, can't go wrong there. If you want to follow me, at Larson Endel, that's me. I follow those guys. I'll post, general things on health and wellness in the kinesiology department. And then follow EIM at KSU, Exercises Medicine at K-State. So definitely follow those if you're looking for up-to-date information on all those different things. Those are great sources. the Department of Kinesiology. So we're just wrapping up majors and minors. So at Kines, and I've had multiple people ask me about this recently, but we just added an integrative physiology degree. And it's an awesome degree. It's designed to prepare students for health-related professional schools. Core curriculum includes courses focused on major systems within the body, cardiovascular, pulmonary, neural, and muscle, and how these symptoms or systems interact with each other in health and disease. So that degree is a super strong degree if you are looking at going into medicine, PA, nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and it's got a strong focus on physiology. Kinesiology is more general. You can kind of build your degree how you want. And so study of physical activity ranges from basic mechanisms of movement to complex. You can read that, but our general kin major is great for people who also want to go into health fields or people who want to be on the prevention side, like me, right? If you want to be in the wellness, health, fitness, performance, strength and conditioning side, you can kind of tailor your degree that way with kinesiology. And then pending final approval, which we hope we get really soon, there's been a lot of people in the department and all over campus who have worked really hard on this and in our college as well. So the BS in public health, which is going to be an awesome degree once we can get that finalized, and it's going to be a really popular one. So keep your eye out for that if you're interested in public health. And then minors, you can get a minor in kines. It's a 15 credit hour minor. You can pick behavior or physiology. And that's a cool thing if you're looking, if you're doing a degree in something else, but you really want some good info in kinesiology, a good foundation, that's a great way to go. And then if you'd like a copy of this, like I said at the beginning, go ahead and email me. Shoot me an email, crlarson@ksu.edu, and I'll shoot this over to you right away.